So I'm Kirk Berge. I'm senior counsel to the FCC's Broadband Data Task Force. I've been working on mapping ever since I joined the commission back in 2005. It was a very different proposition back then. We were using Form 477, which you're probably also familiar with. We initially were just collecting information about subscribership from telephone companies and broadband companies. And then around 2015, started collecting availability with Form 477 for the first time. But as many of you know, we were collecting it at the level of census blocks, which is it's not a very granular level of reporting availability, but it was at the time the best resource, the most comprehensive, and it was mandatory, and thus was the best version of availability that was available to folks. So back in 2020, Congress set us on a course to create a new broadband data collection, which we call the Broadband Data Collection. The idea behind the statute, the Broadband Data Act passed in March of 2020, was to rectify limitations with the Form 477 collection. And there were several components of that. The first was to do something about the granularity issue, the census block level collection of the 477. And so the Broadband Data Act specified that we, the FCC, would create a collection on the basis of individual locations, which is about as granular as you can get. So we went from not so granular to a much more specific collection of the fixed broadband availability. One of the other big changes from 477 is the fact that we get input from multiple stakeholders with the broadband data collection. With 477, it was essentially what was reported to us by providers. Under the broadband data collection, as specified by the Broadband Data Act, we get a number of inputs in addition to what the providers tell us. And as you can see from the slide, this is a high-level view of the collection and how the data flows through it. Our sources are on the left. That's the provider data, which we continue to collect, although it's better than Form 477. We also get information from local governments, tribal governments, other federal agencies, third parties, and the broadband serviceable location fabric, which I'll talk a bit about now. That's an essential component of the fixed wireless reporting. The fabric is a database of coordinates and other information for each broadband serviceable location in the country. It's what enables us to collect on the location level. It essentially is, by itself, does not contain broadband availability data. It's a database of locations, but it is what providers, when they report their availability to us, report to. So it's the foundation for fixed wireless reporting. In the middle there, that's where we get the data. We feed back input into the people who provide the data to us. We validate the data in a number of different ways. We provide technical assistance to filers and to challengers. And we receive challenge and crowdsourcing information, which essentially is a big part of that new dimension to the collection, which is it's possible for stakeholders and many different types of stakeholders to come to us and submit a formal challenge to the provider data. Again, unprecedented. It was not the case for Form 477, and we have, as specified by the Broadband Data Act, a formal process for doing that. I'll talk a bit about where we are with that in a minute. And we also are required by the Broadband Data Act to conduct regular audits of provider information. And so that's another component, another output from us that goes back into the stakeholders who are submitting information to us. So the data is continually improving over time. With that data, we have a number of outputs that we have already begun to release. First of all, improved public maps. They get the benefit of that enhanced granularity for the fixed reporting, as well as the input that helps us improve the accuracy of the data as we go along. That will enable us to, that is the FCC, to make more informed, more accurate decisions about broadband funding, and also will be used by other agencies and other stakeholders, states and others in making their own decisions about broadband data funding, broadband availability funding. We will also use the data for our commission and the reports that we release that involve analysis of markets and the landscape for availability. Okay, to catch us up on where we are, in June of last year, we released the first version of the Broadband Serviceable Locations Fabric, or the Fabric. That was made available to governmental entities, state, local, and tribal, as well as to ISPs who entered into a licensing agreement. So the Broadband Fabric is something we've created in conjunction with a vendor, and it does include proprietary information, but by entering into a licensing agreement, which at no charge, stakeholders are able to get the information that they need to participate in the process. In June of last year, we opened the first filing window for the broadband data collection. It was a 60-day window that closed on September 1st, and that was a collection of data as of June 30, 2022. So like the Form 477, the broadband data collection collects a snapshot on a specific day of data, and then that repeats every 6 months in perpetuity. On September 12th of last year, we opened up for the first time the ability to submit challenges to the Broadband Serviceable Location Fabric. At that time, we opened it up for bulk fabric challenges. It's essentially going to be governmental entities submitting large sets of data that challenge what's in the fabric, and also providers have that option as well. In November of last year, we released the first map based on the first collection. So it's the first map showed June 30, 2022, as reported to us by providers. And by December of last year, we released the second version of the fabric to providers and other stakeholders so that they could apply that second version to the second broadband data collection. So that version of the fabric defined the locations to which providers could report availability. And we, on December 31, opened up the second collection of availability data, again, a 60-day period ending in March 1st for data as of December 31st. So version 2 of the fabric, which again served as the basis for the December 2022 collection, was made available to all fabric license holders on December 30th. Version 2 of the fabric and data collected during the current as of December 31 collection will be released as an update to the National Broadband Map sometime later this spring. I don't have a specific timing on that, but we're working very hard to get that underway and get it in a position where we can publish it. Version 2 includes over 1 million more broadband serviceable locations than were shown in version 1. And that's a result of several efforts. One is our vendor, and we work to identify better information, more information that might be missing from the fabric the first time around. And we also are processing challenges to the fabric that is leading to increased numbers of broadband serviceable locations. That number, that 1 million number, is net. So there were increases and decreases in every state, but when they're netted out, we saw more than 1 million new locations. So March 15th of this year, we indicated would be the target date for submitting fabric challenges to have them be considered for version 3 of the fabric. And that is the version that will be used as the foundation for reporting of data as of June 30th, 2023. We'll collect that from June 30 to September 1, 2023. And so that's the version that we're currently processing challenges for, if to the extent they were submitted prior to March 15th. On January 25th, we released a public notice to assist filers with submitting challenge processes. I should say on our website, which is fcc.gov/broadband data, one word, there is a wealth of information. To the extent you are not sure about how something works or how to participate in any of these processes, that's a really good place to start. It's got video tutorials, frequently asked questions, articles that address issues that we're seeing, and it's a very dynamic resource because we update it continually to account for things that we're hearing from stakeholders, and as we're evolving the process, we want to try to keep that as current as possible in terms of the resources and the information that you need to know to participate. So that was the fabric and fabric challenges. There's also the opportunity to challenge provider availability data. That is subject to a formal process. There's also what's called a crowdsourcing process, or you can submit crowdsource information. And the major difference between the two processes is that the challenge process will always result in an outcome. It will always result either in the challenge being rejected or will conceded by a provider or upheld, in which case that will flow through to the map. Crowdsourcing is much less structured. It doesn't necessarily result in an outcome, at least not directly. We receive that information and it helps to inform our understanding of what might be going on in the availability landscape. We look for trends, possible problems that might warrant further investigation and other measures if that turns out to be appropriate. But getting back to the availability challenge process, it essentially begins with the submission of either an individual challenge or a bulk challenge. Individual challenges generally are going to come from a resident of a location. They're all initiated on our website by going to the map, and you begin at that process. Give us the information that essentially tells us, how do you know that there's not availability there? Give us the evidence that shows that. That is then reviewed for quality assurance and then transmitted to the provider, after which they have 60 days to give us their position on the challenge. They might concede it, they might dispute it. Those are their two options, essentially. And they have to provide us with their evidence at that point to rebut what we've received from the challengers. It's not sufficient for them to say, yes, I do provide service there. They have to give us something more to respond to the challenge. They have to address what's been asserted in the challenge. There's another 60-day timeline that begins at that point after they've made that submission, in which we expect providers and challengers to work together to try to clarify any factual misunderstandings and to share information, and if they're able to resolve the challenge, or in whole or in part. So it's a period that we expect will involve communication between the parties, clarifying any misunderstandings, and ideally will result in a resolution that the provider then can report back to us. If the provider doesn't, if they're not able to report that the challenge has been negotiated to a mutually agreeable outcome, the provider lets us know that, and then it comes to us, the FCC, to adjudicate based on the evidence that we received in the course of the process. So we have, oops. Okay. We're in the middle of that process now, or I should say we're in the first part of it. We're well into that process, the challenge process. We have received a large number of challenges, not surprisingly. We have a team that is dedicated to reviewing those challenges and processing the challenges, providing support where appropriate, and ultimately, once the processes have run their course, adjudicating those that don't resolve during the negotiation process. So we'll continue to do that and the challenge processes. We will continue to support filers, challengers, and other stakeholders in participating in the various elements of the collection. We're processing the availability data that we received on March 1 as of December 31st of last year, and once we work through that process, we will publish the second iteration of the maps based on the second collection. I did want to say we really appreciate the input that we're getting. The collection is established, rightly so, as a multi-party effort. There's no way we could do it. We could get maps that we're going to get by ourselves. We really require input from many different parts of the community that are involved in broadband, and we really appreciate. We know it's not easy. What I tell people is we're in the hard part right now. We do expect that once we get through this part, we will the maps will be in good shape. They'll have accounted for a lot of the information that we need to include in them, and that will at a certain point get to just maintaining the maps, dealing with changes since the prior reporting period, and taking other maintenance type actions. So thank you very much for what you've been doing. I know it's a lot of effort, and you've got a lot of other things that you need to do as well. So it's very much appreciated. So this is the website that I mentioned. Again, a great starting point because you can go from there and find lots and lots of different resources. And if you're not successful there, there are avenues that are evident on the website for getting in touch with people who can assist you personally to the extent you need to do that. And lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge that Sayuri, who maybe all of you know, she's now a tribal liaison for the Broadband Data Task Force that I'm working on. We're very, very happy to have her in that capacity, and wanted just to acknowledge that change for us. So I'll stop there. I think we'll take questions at the end. So I'll hand it over to Derik. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. I'm happy to be here. I'm Derik Goatson. I'm here from the Office of Native Affairs and Policy in the FCC. Today I'm talking about the Affordable Connectivity Program. So first of all, I'd like to pose the question, what is the benefit? The benefit has two components. The first component is a one-time benefit. It's the connected device benefit. And this benefit, a household can receive it as long as a participating provider is offering the benefit. And it's important to note that in both these benefits, providers are not obligated to participate in the ACP and provide these benefits. So households that are interested need to check with their local service providers to make sure that they're offering the benefits and not merely assume that their local providers are offering these two benefits. Especially, I mentioned that because most providers provide the monthly benefit, which is a discount to the broadband bill for a household, but few providers actually provide the discount benefit. And the discount benefit, a connected device is defined as a desktop, tablet, or laptop computer. That excludes a mobile device such as a cell phone. So a connected device, a cell phone, is not eligible to get the $100 ACP benefit. We get that question a lot. For the monthly benefit, there's a $30 discount, but if a household lives on tribal lands, they are eligible to receive a $75 benefit. Now it's important to note that this is just a household that's located on tribal lands. The household does not need to be an enrolled member of a tribe that's living on tribal lands to be eligible for the enhanced benefit. The household merely needs to be located and reside on tribal lands to get that $75 benefit. We do not look at tribal enrollment as a criteria to get the $75 benefit. Okay, so a household. A household is, we define it as an economic unit of multiple persons, whether or not they are related or not. And to be an economic unit means you share in household expenses. So there's two ways a household can become eligible under the ACP program. The first way is based on the income of the entire household. So the yearly income of the household, as long as it is at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, as you can go to the website and check that fluctuates year to year, that household will be eligible. The second way that a household can become eligible is the best way because it's the most flexible. And by that I mean, for a household to become eligible in the participation requirement, I'm going to call one the income requirement, and I'm going to call the second one the participation requirement. For the participation requirement, it's not based on the entire household's income. What it's based on is any member of the household if they participate in an approved government program. And that it's regardless of age. So if you have a child in your home that receives reduced lunch, it's one of the criterion mentioned here on the slide, the entire household gets the ACP monthly benefit. And so, or if you have an elderly person or a veteran in the household, if that one person is in the household, then that automatically qualifies the entire household. This is why the participation requirement is the most important criterion for to determine eligibility. And the FCC has also included specific tribal programs, such as the BIA General Assistance Program, the Tribal TAMF program, and then also the Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations, and even the Tribal Head Start programs. Those are also included in the participation requirement for the ACP program. And here's a list of such federal programs that a household can become eligible through. And so here, this is also a sticky issue. FCC, we do not define tribal lands like the Department of Interior. We have our own definition of tribal lands that's in the federal regulations. And this is our definition of tribal lands. And this definition comes from the Lifeline program. And so the Lifeline program, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with, that's part of the Universal Service Fund. And that is a pre-existing program that also is an affordability program for households. So what the commission decided to do was basically just borrow that definition and use it for the Affordable Connectivity Program. And here you can see a map of qualifying tribal areas. I just want to mention the last bullet point concerning any land approved as tribal for purposes of Lifeline or the ACP by the FCC's ONAP and Wireline Competition Bureau. That is a process that very few tribes have gone through and tried to take advantage of. And so if you're interested in going through that process, let us know afterward and we can talk about it. There's specific federal regulations about that as well. Okay, so how does the ACP protect consumers? The big takeaway I want to mention here, this is not a comprehensive list of the consumer protections, but this is an illustrative list. And the most important thing to realize for households is the benefit is portable across providers. So if you have multiple providers in a geographical area that are participating in the ACP program, and a household wants to transfer it from one provider to another, the household can do that. Also, the household is free to choose any of the programs that their provider is offering to the public and apply that ACP monthly discount to any of those programs. And another important thing is a tribal household or any household, they are not considered ineligible based on any past debts or a credit check. This is to make the benefit accessible to as many households as possible. And this is what the consumer protections are for. Also, bill shock. I have to mention that the ACP program, unlike our Universal Service Fund programs, is finite. It's an appropriated amount, so it's not in perpetuity. So at some point, the fund's going to be completely depleted. And so what the bill shock is referring to is once the funds start to run out, the participating providers have an obligation to give advance notice to households that are receiving the benefit that the benefit is going to end, and they will let them know when that benefit is before, so they do not have to pay the fee without the ACP discount. Okay, so here are some ACP outreach tools that the FCC is providing, and this toolkit is made very generic purposefully, so you can go in and customize this toolkit for your local needs. And we even provide a tribal public service announcement that could be used for tribal radio stations, if you have a tribal radio station, that we've created specifically for participating providers that are offering ACP benefit on tribal lands. Okay, so the ACP program, it's designed to make internet more affordable for everyone. However, there is a gap that the FCC has realized between the people that are the households that are eligible to apply for the program and the actual households that are enrolled in the program. And with in tribal areas, the gap is even bigger than in non-tribal areas. I looked on the USAC website, and approximately 240,000 tribal households are enrolled in ACP across the entire country. Now we know there are more than 240,000 tribal households in the nation. So tribal households are not enrolling in this program. So we created a grant program specifically for outreach organizations and tribal governments. If they want to receive grant funding to participate in outreach activities, we are providing that funding for them. And the purpose of this outreach funding is for two reasons. The first is to raise awareness in your local areas that the ACP benefit is being offered. The second component is to offer in-person application assistance on the ACP application process. I don't know how many of you have actually tried to fill out the ACP program. I tried to do it myself, and it's a long process. And not only that, it poses certain barriers for tribal households, especially in rural areas, like in where I'm from in the Navajo Reservation. Certain tribal homes don't always have a fixed physical address. They get their mail delivered through P.O. Box because, you go to the road, you turn right off this dirt road, you drive, 2 miles, and then you turn at the old windmill, and then there's the house where I live. So in order to accommodate that, in the application process, they've created a tool where you can pinpoint it on a map and approximate where your house is located in a rural area. But there's other barriers in the ACP application process because it's a long process. And so what we're doing is we're providing funding so that if a local organization wants to provide, let's say, a center or offer hours where they provide in-person assistance to help a household sign up for the program, you can apply to get this funding. So the FCC, realizing the importance of raising awareness on tribal lands, they created what's called the TCOP, and that is the Tribal Connectivity Outreach Program. So it's a set-aside amount of money for only outreach activities on tribal lands. Now I have to mention a certain caveat on those entities that are eligible to receive this funding. Tribal service providers are not eligible to receive this outreach grant program. However, any other tribal government entity can apply for the outreach grant program. For example, if you're a tribal carrier and you want to raise awareness and enrollment assistance in your areas, you can apply directly, but you can have an adjacent tribal entity. Let's say you have an administrative division for your tribal government. They are eligible to apply for this outreach grant program. And if you have any questions about that, let me know. We've been getting a lot of questions about eligibility for tribal governmental entities. And so an important development is there. So we had a funding window close already, and we announced winners. But we're going to have a second round of funding available. And so this second round of funding we will also have a tribal set aside for outreach activities on tribal lands. And so there will be a notice of funding opportunity that will be published in the near future concerning this second round of funding for the outreach grant opportunity. And I just want to list some resources here. If you have any questions about ACP or have any issues going through the application process, feel free to let me know. Thank you.
So, do you guys have any questions of the FCC? I see hands everywhere. Wow. Okay. Let's start in the front right here. Kevin?
My question is, given the current burn rate of the ACP funding that's allocated, how long do you expect the current ACP funding to last?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the initial order, they estimated at, I believe, 5 to 6 years that it would last. And all I know is the burn rate is faster, and it's been gaining each year that the ACP has been out. The first year the burn rate wasn't as high, but it's getting higher and higher. So all I can say is it's probably not going to last the full 5 or 6 years that they initially projected.
I know I was on that committee for Intergovernmental Advisory Committee to get more subscribership. I guess we're good. Yeah, I guess we're good. Next question.
Yes, I may be mistaken, but I believe there was a criterion in the ACP that if a household applied to get the subsidy, that their current provider could not downgrade their service as a requirement. That was supposed to be illegal, I believe. So if an applicant qualifies for the subsidy, they can't be downgraded. The subsidy has to be offered at the program they currently have. Is that correct?
That is correct. It includes any legacy program that the subscriber is offering. So even if it's a plan that the participating provider is no longer offering to the public, but that certain household is still on that legacy plan, they can maintain that plan and still use it with the ACP benefit.
Another question over here on this side. Okay.
Hey, how's it going? Steve of the Fort McDermott Paiute Shoshone Tribe. One of the questions I have, because we've run into this on our reservation, we have talked to Derik earlier about the BEAD program being now explicitly tied to the FCC broadband map in June, which means that all of the inaccuracies, if we don't get them done in 3 months, we are going to, run the risk of not being served. So as an example, our tribe our reservation lands are showing fully served. There's no fiber and there's no infrastructure connectivity for 75 miles. So we know that's inaccurate. And that directly conflicts with the state's own maps that are actually accurate to the location data. The second thing is every single reservation address on our reservation has the wrong town. So we're going to have to go through and correct every single address. We're also missing our anchor institutions and probably about 20% of the houses, which means we're going to have to go correct that too. We can't get into the BDC database yet. We're working on that with the Technical Assistance Center. But my question here, or my request is, this is not uncommon, right? Derik mentioned a lot of the address data that is in the FCC broadband map for every reservation in the country, right, is typically going to be wrong. We're working with the Omaha Tribe of Nebraska to help them out as well. 80% of their addresses do not match between FCC, Google, or Apple. And so that whole process needs to be validated. We have to go back to utility records to validate the address data to make sure that we actually have the accurate ones. And as Derik mentioned, in those cases where there are no addresses, we may have to do something about creating a temporary address to put it in the systems. That process alone is going to take 6 months, right? And if the goal of the government is to help us get connectivity to every household on the reservation, and fiber is the way to do that, we run the real risk of completely getting carved out of the BEAD funding in some of the most critical areas because of a statute that was put in place and then a lack of coordination between all the agencies. So my request is, can we have some level of exception and an emergency exception? This is not something that can wait until after June, because it is going to directly impact funding for every tribe in this room.
Thank you for that question. So a couple of things. As I mentioned, we're continuing to process the availability data and the fabric data. There was an enormous change between version 1 and version 2 of the fabrics that is not yet reflected on the public map. I think when it is, you'll see there's been dramatic improvement over the accuracy of what's the case on the ground. Same with the availability data. The first version of that is what's shown now. We're continuing to refine that and improve it. We're seeing a lot, very happy to see a lot of cooperation between providers and challengers. We're seeing a lot of concessions to challenges, very, very large numbers of that, which is a great thing to see, because it means people are exchanging information. They're getting to the truth of what's going on the ground. With regard to the BEAD program, that's an NTIA program. I shouldn't really talk about the substance of it. However, I will say that the June 30 target or benchmark, however you want to put it, is about the state allocations. And it's very important, but it's also really important to that the fabric and the availability data get changed and corrected to the extent they're not in line going forward. Because from my understanding, and if you have questions, please check with NTIA, but it's later versions of the map and the fabric that will determine what locations can actually receive funding. So I guess, bottom line, there's been a lot of improvement. We're continuing to work on that. We understand the time constraints and the urgency. We've got people working very, very hard to get the challenges processed, to get the fabric corrected to the extent that's been brought to our attention. And I think you're going to see a big improvement once the second version is out.
Okay, and then the second question, and then I'm done, sorry. The big thing I think that is really skewing the data right now across the board is Starlink. Starlink is showing as 350 megabit download, 40 megabit upload across the entire US footprint, across every reservation boundary, and they are oftentimes the most high-speed provider on the map in those areas. The FCC, to our knowledge, already pulled RDOF funding from Starlink because they didn't meet the speed requirements, and the FCC's own data says they don't meet it. So my question or request is, can we get Starlink corrected in relation to at least the reservation lands? Because it is overly, it's painting a much rosier picture than is adequate. If you look at Starlink as a viable option, it's $600, somewhere around there for the equipment alone, the power requirements of 30 watts, which most reservation households can't cover. So there's a lot of things that are artificially putting a much rosier picture around it, which is to, all of us is going to have a huge detriment to our ability to actually deliver service to our members, right? So is there anything that we can do around that specifically? Because I think that's one area where it's completely skewing the results.
Yep. So it is correct. The FCC did determine that not to award RDOF funding to Starlink. The basis for that is in the item that made that determination. I'll let that speak for itself. NTIA, and again, not a BEAD expert, but NTIA has made a decision that satellite services won't constitute reliable broadband service, so it won't be a factor in their funding, as I understand it. So, my advice, I guess, would be to focus on other elements, at least for now, until BEAD works. We work through the BEAD process, given that it's not a part of the equation for that. But again, defer all BEAD questions to NTIA.
I'm sorry we came to the end of our program, but these guys are going to be on the side, right? Please go to their booth right over here on the side, and they can answer your questions personally.
Yeah, I should say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're going to be here
today and part of tomorrow. So please don't hesitate to approach us with questions. That's why we're here. We want to engage. We're ready to hear the good and the bad. The bad probably helps us a little more than the good. So anything you want to share with us, we're happy to engage on.
Great. Thank you. All right. Appreciate you guys.